Ce rol joacă umanioarele în ziua de azi? Ce putere mai are literatura și studiile literare în lumea neoliberală? Vom căuta răspunsuri la aceste întrebări dialogând astăzi cu profesorul Franco Moretti. Rămâneți cu noi! Professor Moretti, you are one of the most important analysts of literature today. You study literature in a very interesting way, bringing scientific perspectives, quantitative research, evolution theory, stuff like that. You are the creator of the literary lab at the Stanford University, where you have been studying in the US for the past 25 years. What is your opinion about the place of humanities in our contemporary world?
I think there is I would make a difference between two things. One is the place of, say, fiction and literature and drama and film and all these things in contemporary life, and that, in my opinion, is in an excellent, it's flourishing. Maybe it's moving from written literature to some digital forms of communication.
Hypertext and stuff.
But if anything, I would say that the fictional is invading more and more areas of life. So I wouldn't worry. I would be worried that it is a little too healthy, not that it's not healthy enough. The study of the humanities, so the study of the humanities is a different story. People watch as much or more fiction than they used to 50 years ago. More people have access to that, etc., etc. The study of fiction, however, has lost weight, and so has the study of history, and so has the study of philosophy, and so on and so on. Why? Not because the phenomena they study have lost importance in the world. That's not it. It's, in my opinion, it's the conjunction of two things. The first is, and here I speak as someone who's worked in the American system for a quarter century. It's a very expensive system. Students who go into that system usually come up with an enormous debt that they have to repay. And so they want to study something that will make them money quickly. Whence the growth in business school and also, you know, all sorts of applied. This takes talents away. This makes the pool smaller. But the more important process, I think, is that the humanities, and I here think mostly of literature, philosophy, and history, that's triangulation, has not managed to develop great and striking theories in the way that genetics, astrophysics, and of course all the sciences allied with the digital have. Honestly, an intelligent 18-year-old who wants to study intelligent ideas, why should he study literature instead of astrophysics? That's a question I find difficult to answer. 50 years ago, one could have said, no, look at the people, what they're doing in anthropology, in literature, with linguistics, etc., etc.
It has lost its touch and its sting also.
It has lost it's also lost its polemical and political sting, but it mostly has lost its ambition.
Is it also because of the political significance? I mean, you come from the left, from the left in Italy, And you know, the left has lost a bit of its way in the new world.
This must have played a role, but I would not identify the humanities with the left. I mean, honestly, you know. Certainly, yes, the polemical edge has disappeared, even though, for instance, in America, it has been an enormous politicization of the humanities because of you know, identity politics, etc., etc. But it's, let's say that what seems to me to have disappeared from the scene is the connection between a polemical political position and an interesting theoretical argument.
You are known for something called digital humanities, and a lot of data, a lot of interpretations, a lot of studies have already been written inside this field.
Yeah.
But at some point, I know that in an interview at the beginning of this year, you questioned exactly what you told me now, that there are not enough bold theories in this field.
Yeah.
What would be a bold theory in such a field?
This is difficult to say, because you know, you don't really think of a bold theory first and then come up with it. Mm-hmm. They happen. I think you know, they recently one of the people given either the physics or the chemistry Nobel Prize has said, you know, all major discoveries, you don't look for them, you stumble upon them. Yeah. And then, if you're lucky, you notice what you found.
Do we have examples in the field of literary studies, the formalists, the Russian formalists?
The Russian formalists definitely were one such. You know, it doesn't get more ambitious. For me, they've always been the model. When they said the reason why forms change is not because reality has changed, but because these are stunning reversals of the current, of what was current 100 years ago. Way of looking at literature.
Would you put structuralism in the same area?
The structuralist movement was similar.
Yeah. And it brought a lot of people to the field.
It brought a lot of people to literature. It is astonishing how relatively little it produced, considering how many people went into the field and how many smart people. It was quickly undone by some of its own members, you know, post-structuralism, anti-structuralism, deconstruction, etc., etc. One such bold theory could try to do the following. We have theories of narrative, of plot. We have theories of style, literary language, metaphor, etc. There is no synthetic theory. There is no theory that simultaneously explains plot and style. This could be an ambition. It's a very technical thing.
Yeah, just like in physics with
exactly.
the two. Yeah, we need a theory.
Exactly. The final synthesis. This is something that, to my knowledge, no one has tried. I have toyed with the idea, but I've never been able to figure out how to begin, let alone to...
But in the current academic field, especially in the US, one can take such risks because it may not bring results, it may remain a mere speculation. Do you have time? Do you have enough results?
Oh, we have enough time. Yeah, we have time. Mm-hmm. I mean, well, the American system, let's say, it's a very... it's a pyramid. So when people like you and me now talk about the American system, we're really talking about the tip of the pyramid, where indeed there is time, there is money, there is people to try and do that. Risk-taking, it's a different story. I mean, the American university system is a market one, and on the market, 99% of the time, you have to take enough risk to be a little different from your competitors, but not too much, because otherwise, so it's not conducive to bold theories, this position taking, as it said. No, I often think that, there are better chances for bold theories in a place like Europe, where you have different national cultures.
And the university system is different, the research is done a bit differently. Let's speculate in another direction. In The Bourgeois, your book from 2013, you say at some point that you would like to learn from the intelligence of the past in order to make a critique of the present. Can you elaborate on that? What would a critique of the present mean?
The Bourgeois, the title, it sounds like a political manifesto. In fact, it's a book of history. It's a book of history with its own political and polemical viewpoint, but it's really the book of a historian. I wish I had been able to use those categories for a better analysis of the present. I haven't. All right. The book originated in that way, and so. The next book I would like to write, and it's the first time I say it in public.
Nobody hears us, so you can.
It's a book on, in literary terms, I would say it's a book on tragedy. But the reason I'm interested in tragedy, it's because I'm interested in conflict, and more specifically in conflict to death. The type of conflict that ends with someone dead, or everybody dead, even. This, and what interests me is how can there be simultaneously conflict so radical that only death can satisfy it, so to speak, and yet language so rich and intelligent from both sides, because tragedy is not that one side is just a villain. Yeah, maybe it's a villain. Macbeth is a villain.
But he speaks eloquently. Yes.
So this is what interests me, and this is something that, of course, does have a reflex on contemporary events. The world of today is full of conflicts to death. Would anyone today be able to write an Antigone in which the two opposite forces, the state and someone who from the state could be seen as a terrorist, can equally be allowed to speak, and to speak eloquently? I don't think
in his own point of view.
Yeah, I don't think as a culture we're capable of that anymore.
There must be a reason why.
There must be a reason why. If I knew the reason why, I would have written the book already.
Okay. So
but I would like to study, and in order to answer a question which has to do with burning issues of today. Does that answer more or less?
Absolutely. And I think in The Bourgeois you have fragments in which you refer to the present, the bank crisis, the capitalism, the America after the Second World War, and even the analysis of this literature, mainly of the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century, follows a lot of how ideology works. And this is a perspective on ideology that probably can be used in a contemporary world, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Ideology also comes in many forms. I mean, you can study 19th century ideology by basically reading a few important books. You can read Bentham and Mill, and that is a piece of bourgeois ideology, and so on and so on. Today, it comes in a different form. It's not as explicit. It's not as conceptually complex, and it's more fragmented in the communication of the media. So I am not sure. At times, in wondering how would I relate this study of tragedy to the present, I've wondered, and where do I go look for documents of the, certainly not contemporary plays. There are many good contemporary plays, but that's not the point. So how do I find an equivalent? And I really am not sure yet.
Would you agree, correct me if I'm wrong, that your type of analysis in the Bourgeois or even in the other books views forms as, to a certain extent, political, because they influence, because they influence perception, they create a certain mentality and stuff like that. Could we attract more people to our field, to literary studies, by pinpointing that the way we view the world is also built on literary devices or styles?
Yeah, okay, let me, I've just been writing, I could show you the page, I don't have it with me, I have it in the hotel. Just been writing on this concept of form the last 24 hours. And I think I finally understand why it's so important for me. Finally, after 50 years that I have, but anyway, I'm glad it's happened at least. It seems to me that it's like a triangle. Form simultaneously addresses social issues that exist, but it addresses them with technical means of language, of plot, I mean, with technical means that require, technical knowledge. But it's not only that, because these historical materials, let's call them like that, that are then transformed by these very specific techniques, are transformed in such a way that when we watch a film or read a novel, have pleasure from it. Mm-hmm. So it's this strange triangulation of social problems, technical means, and aesthetic pleasure. To me, this is extremely appealing. It's also extremely complicated. And I think in the humanities nowadays, I'm still thinking United States, because that's where, in the humanities nowadays, my colleagues, my bad colleagues, no, a lot of people, I'm sure, including myself every now and then, we are trying to appeal to people not in the name of intellectual complication, but in the name of something else, which can be political correctness, which can be fun, which can be, whatever. So, and instead, I return to my initial, we have to say, look, we can study something as complex as a molecule, but it requires a lot of work. You have to be a social historian, a linguist, and an aesthetic philosopher at once. Do you have the courage to try and be these three things at once and try and find them in a little detail? This is how we could appeal to people. But would that matter for them? I really don't know this. I really don't know.
We are in a system that from time to time, or almost all the time nowadays, tells us that we should adapt to the market. Even the university should adapt to the market. We should produce, a certain kind of knowledge. And should literary studies adapt to the market, to the world?
What market?
Should it be
there
the other way around?
There is no market for literary studies. There is no market. I mean, there is publishing, which is shrinking. There is teaching literature, which is shrinking. So adapting to the market means simply
disappearing.
Yeah. No, I think I would justify, how do we justify teaching the humanities in higher education? Again, we've had this discussion. Most of my colleagues say, especially at Stanford, which is in the middle of Silicon Valley, studying the humanities makes you uniquely flexible. Okay. Tech companies want people in the humanities. This is like a passport to the future. I think this is bullshit. And you find a way to translate bullshit into Romanian, but I think studying the humanities should be justified in the same way that reading a book or watching a movie or listening to a scientific lecture is justified. That is to say, intellectual pleasure. Intellectual pleasure. Then, of course, having studied the humanities, you're also capable of doing something. You would be a good administrator, an excellent librarian, etc., etc. But you would be that even if you'd studied something else, honestly. The justification lies in the fact that just like people have a right to a lot of things that 100, 300, 500 years ago were considered a luxury, intellectual understanding also used to be considered a luxury. It should not anymore. More and more people study, have the literacy, of course, and they have the means. So intellectual pleasure ought to become a right. How do we justify the humanities? In the name of the intellectual excitement they can convey. But then you have to be able to do this intellectual excitement. So you have to have good theories and intelligent language in which to express them. Will we be capable of that? I doubt it. But that's how I would, if I had a magic wand, that's how I would do it.
So we're back to a position of the political left.
Yeah.
I mean, a right to that.
A right.
Not
a right.
something that
a right to high culture. Mm-hmm. A right to high culture.
In the neoliberal America, that doesn't sound that fitting, right?
No.
You work in the literary lab at Stanford, and digital humanities is quite big, I suppose, in America right now. You started as an experiment. It goes on for it has been going on for several years. Where are you now?
We are at the point in which I have, after having directed the literary lab for 5 or 6 years, I think that institutions deserve to survive if they are institutions, not if they are persons. So I withdrew, and a younger colleague is now the director of the literary lab, and he will chart the next 4 or 5 years, and I'm happy that this is the case. So I will become just a collaborator. If the you did not refer to me, but to the lab, I would say it's something strange. When we started it 5 or 6 years ago, I was convinced that within a few years, the model would have caught, and say Harvard, Duke, Berkeley would all have literary labs or historical labs. And instead, the model has not caught. And I think, again, perhaps, I don't know why, maybe it's a bad model. That would be the simplest explanation. Or maybe it's a model that requires a lot of work. And
in order to produce results and bold theories.
And bold theories, but also in order simply to exist. I mean, just, it's a very egalitarian model, because, you know, you're sitting around the table, there is no professor, no students, you're all potentially equal. And egalitarianism, again, is no longer
a word in fashion.
It's a very hierarchical. So the digital humanities is, you said, it's quite big. I would say it's growing.
It reached Romania. It must be big enough.
Romania.
Professor Moretti, allow me, I wouldn't forgive myself if I weren't asking about Nanni Moretti.
Yes.
Are you in dialogue? Are you in dialogue with him about what you studied? Do you view the things?
I certainly see I've seen all his films. I don't think he has read all my books, but this is an asymmetry which I accept as a fact of life.
And you were in 2 of his films, if I'm not wrong.
No, I was in the early films when he didn't have money for actors. But I was so bad that as soon as he had a little money, I am really a disaster as an actor, as is my sister. My father was very good. But we don't talk about work that much, but we are in touch. You know, I've lived first in Milan, And then in the United States, I've not lived in Rome for over 30 years. He's never left Rome. So these are just, you know, life choices that are very different. And I think, well, I would not say whether the way we understand work is similar or not. I would say we definitely have a very strong work ethic. We're perfectionists of sorts. This may come from my parents, I don't know. But certainly, the work ethic certainly comes from my parents. They were two professors, but they were very serious people, and serious in the good sense, not somber, not sad people. They were, especially my father was not sad at all. Yeah, that's...
Well, I can tell you that you have something else in common. You are both very admired and loved here in Cluj. Professor Moretti, thank you very much. I am honored and very pleased about this encounter.
It's been a delight. Thank you.
În volumul său din 2013, The Bourgeois, Franco Moretti spune că dorește să folosească inteligența trecutului pentru a înțelege prezentul. Poate că acesta rămâne sensul teoriei și al culturii, iar neglijarea acestora are consecințe îngrijorătoare. La revedere!